Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. This time we're diving into something I think we can all relate to.
Oh, yeah.
Stress.
Yeah, definitely.
But here's the twist.
Okay.
We're not focusing on managing our own stress this time.
Interesting.
We're going to try to go deeper and figure out how to help someone else when they're stressed.
That's a really good topic.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So to help us with this, we've got a really interesting mix of sources this time.
Oh, cool.
We've got advice from psychologists and therapists.
Okay.
Some practical tips from websites like WikiHow and Psych Central.
I love WikiHow.
Me too.
It's got everything.
It's got advice for everything.
Yeah.
Even stuff you didn't know.
Exactly.
You even needed advice for.
Yeah.
And we've even got some life coach wisdom thrown in for good measure.
Oh, wow. A good mix.
Yeah.
That's going to be a good one.
So what we're going to try and do in this deep dive
Okay.
is we're going to really try and uncover some specific actionable insights into how to support someone who's feeling stressed.
Okay, so going beyond the usual, like, just relax.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because have you ever noticed how,
Yeah. Sometimes that can backfire.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you say, just relax, and it makes things worse.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like it's insulting, like you're not even listening to how bad I feel.
Right. And they're like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really stressed.
Yeah.
And you're like, just relax.
Yeah, exactly. Just relax.
I can think of so many times I've been like, oh, just don't worry about it. Or I've said something like that thinking I was being helpful.
Right.
But now that I look back, I'm like, oh, I probably just made things worse.
Yeah, you're just minimizing their feelings.
Right.
And not really acknowledging how difficult the situation is.
Exactly. It's like we forget that stress isn't like
Yeah.
a math problem with a simple solution.
Right.
It's like this really complex
Yeah.
emotional thing. And everyone experiences it so differently.
Totally.
So I guess the question is then, where
Yeah.
do we even begin?
Right.
If fixing it isn't the answer, what is?
Well, all of our sources seem to agree
Yeah.
on one crucial first step,
Okay.
and that's recognizing the signs.
Okay. So we're not just talking about like the really obvious signs of stress, right?
Right.
Like someone snapping at their coworker or like having a total meltdown.
Right, exactly. Like the more extreme behaviors.
Yeah.
But there's more subtle things to look out for.
Okay.
Psych Central actually pointed out
Uh-huh.
that even seemingly positive changes can actually be a red flag.
Interesting.
So, for example, someone suddenly becoming a gym fanatic or throwing themselves into work
Right.
could actually be masking, like, deeper stress.
Wow, that's interesting. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, it's like how some people turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms,
Right?
but it's disguised as something more acceptable.
Right.
So it's all about looking for, like, shifts in behavior, even subtle ones.
Okay.
Maybe they're sleeping more or less than usual, withdrawing from social events,
Right.
or even becoming overly critical.
Okay, so like playing detective a little bit.
Exactly.
Paying attention to the people in our lives and kind of noticing any changes that might be stress-related.
Yes. And once we've identified that someone might be struggling,
Okay.
the next step is absolutely critical, and it's where a lot of us go wrong.
I'm already feeling like I know where this is going.
You and everyone else.
I'm sensing this is where I mess up
Right.
sometimes.
Our experts are unanimous on this. The absolute worst thing you can do is dismiss or minimize someone's stress.
Oh.
Like when we say those platitudes, like, don't be stressed, everything will be fine.
Right.
You're just brushing it off.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely guilty of that.
Yeah.
But why is that so counterproductive?
Well, one therapist put it perfectly. When you tell someone to calm down or brush off their worries, you're basically telling them that their feelings are invalid.
Ouch. Yeah. That would make me feel worse, not better.
Exactly. And it shuts down communication
Right.
and makes them less likely to open up in the future.
All right. So if we're not trying to fix their problems or tell them to just chill out,
Yeah.
what are we supposed to do?
Well, the key word here is validation.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging their struggle, letting them know that you see their pain and you hear them.
So it's about making them feel seen and understood, not judged or dismissed.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a concept that came up again and again in our sources.
Okay.
Active listening.
I feel like I hear that phrase all the time.
Right.
But what does it actually mean in this context?
Well, it's about truly being present with someone, listening without judgment.
Okay.
And offering a safe space for them to vent and process their emotions.
So putting down our phones, making eye contact.
Exactly.
Really absorbing what they're saying.
Right. And one of the most powerful things we read was this anecdote
Oh.
from a person who was dealing with chronic stress.
Okay.
And they said their friends could help by making me a cup of tea, holding me while I cry, making me laugh.
Oh, I love that.
Right.
It's so simple but so powerful. It really highlights how sometimes the smallest acts of care can be so impactful.
And it's not about having all the answers.
Right.
Or even saying the right thing. Sometimes it's just about being there.
Being present.
Exactly.
But then I imagine there are also times when people do want more than just a listening ear.
You're absolutely right. And that's where it gets a little bit more nuanced.
Okay.
We need to understand the difference between offering emotional support,
Okay.
which we've been talking about,
Right.
and offering practical help.
Okay, so figuring out which type of support is actually needed in the moment.
Exactly. Instead of assuming,
Oh, okay.
sometimes what someone needs is a shoulder to cry on, a safe space to vent.
Right.
But other times they might be so overwhelmed that practical help is more valuable.
Right, so it's like if they're drowning in work and responsibilities,
Yeah.
offering to cook dinner or run errands might be way more helpful than just listening to them complain about it.
It's all about tuning into their individual needs
Oh.
and responding accordingly.
This is already making me rethink like how I approach supporting other people, because I think I often jump to giving advice or
Right.
trying to fix things before I really even understand what's going on.
That's a common trap we all fall into.
Yeah.
But the good news is there are specific things we can do to be more effective and supportive.
And I bet that's where asking the right questions comes in.
Yes.
Like WikiHow had some really good examples of that.
Yeah. Instead of assuming we know what someone needs, we need to get curious
Right.
and ask questions that can help uncover the root causes of their stress.
Okay, so like things like, how are things going at work? Or are you getting enough sleep?
Exactly. Those kinds of targeted questions can open up a deeper conversation
Right.
and help us understand the situation better.
I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like we're moving beyond those generic, just relaxed platitudes
Yeah.
and getting into like the real nitty-gritty of
Totally.
how to actually support someone
Right.
who's struggling.
And speaking of the nitty-gritty,
Okay, here we go.
let's talk about some specific stress-busting activities,
Okay.
because our sources had a lot to say about those.
All right, so we've laid the groundwork. We've talked about recognizing the signs, validating feelings, asking good questions. Now, what can we actually do to help someone de-stress?
Well, first, let's acknowledge that what works for one person might not work for another.
Okay.
There are some general principles
Okay.
that tend to be helpful.
I'm ready.
One that came up repeatedly was the power of nature. Encouraging someone to spend time outdoors, even for a short walk, can do wonders for their mood.
That makes sense. Fresh air, sunshine, a change of scenery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to stay stressed
Well-
when you're surrounded by nature.
It's true.
And speaking of things that can shift our mood,
But,
laughter is another powerful tool.
oh yeah.
So maybe you put on a funny movie, share a silly joke, or reminisce about a funny memory together.
Yeah.
Anything that brings a bit of lightness and joy.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's like giving their stress a timeout
Exactly.
and just letting them enjoy the moment.
Right.
I love that.
And sometimes a different kind of release is needed.
Okay.
A good cry.
Oh.
Psych Central mentioned that while more research is needed,
Okay.
crying might actually help release stress hormones.
Interesting.
Right. So,
I always feel better after a good cry.
right. And even if it doesn't have a direct physiological impact,
Okay.
offering someone a safe space to cry can be incredibly supportive.
Right. It's that validation piece again.
Exactly.
Letting them know it's okay to express their emotions,
Yeah.
whatever they may be.
It's all about creating a space of acceptance and understanding.
So we've got nature, laughter, good cry.
Uh-huh.
Anything else in our stress-busting toolkit?
Well, one that might not be a surprising exercise,
The classic go-to for stress.
but it's not just about the physical benefits, although those are important.
Right.
Exercise can release endorphins, boost mood, and improve sleep,
Wow.
all of which can help combat stress.
And I imagine it can also just be a really good way to clear your head
Exactly.
and kind of get out of a negative thought spiral.
It's about shifting your focus, moving your body, and releasing pent-up energy.
I'm already starting to feel less stressed just talking about this stuff.
Me too.
But I'm also realizing as we talk about this
yeah,
that sometimes our best efforts as friends and family
right.
might not be enough.
You're absolutely right, and that's an important point to acknowledge.
Okay.
There's a limit to what we can do as non-professionals.
So when do we know
Right.
it's time to encourage someone to seek professional help?
That's a tough question, and it's going to be different for everyone.
Right.
But one of our sources, Wiki,
Yeah.
put it this way, encourage them to seek professional help if necessary.
And I think it's important to remember that seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
It is.
It takes courage to reach out for support.
It does.
And it shows a commitment to their well-being. And I'm so glad we're talking about this because I think there's still so much stigma around mental health.
There is.
And I think the more we can normalize these conversations,
the
easier it will be for people to get the help they need.
I agree.
This has been such an insightful deep dive so far.
It has.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
But it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
We are. And there's one more crucial element I want to bring in before we move on.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's something that really resonated with me from our research.
Okay.
It's the idea of approaching helping someone with stress, not with the intent to fix them, but rather to simply be there to listen, to validate, and to empower them to find their own solutions.
I love that.
Right.
It's about walking alongside them on their journey.
Yeah.
Not trying to drag them to a destination
Exactly.
we've chosen.
It's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is. It takes the pressure off of us to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And it puts the focus back on the person who's struggling.
And that's where true support begins.
This is all making so much sense.
How's that?
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
is there anything else our listeners should keep in mind?
Yes. There's one final but crucial point I'd like to emphasize.
Okay.
It's the idea of helping someone with stress.
Oh, okay.
Not with the intent to fix them, but rather to simply be there to listen, to validate.
I love that.
And to empower them to find their own solutions.
It's about walking alongside them on their journey, not trying to drag them to a destination we've chosen.
Remember, each person's experience with stress is unique, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
So true.
So
what works for one person might not work for another, and that's why asking questions and really listening is so crucial.
precisely, it's about empowering them to find what works best for them.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I
Okay.
feel like I have a whole new perspective
I'm glad.
on how to help someone who's stressed.
Remember, sometimes the smallest gestures of care can have the biggest impact.
Absolutely. A listening ear, a helping hand, a simple reminder that they're not alone. These things can make all the difference.
They can. And now I have a question for you, our listener. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to fix your stress instead of simply listening? How did that make you feel?
That's a great question to reflect on. And on that note, we'll wrap up this part of our deep dive. We hope you found these insights helpful and that you'll carry them with you as you navigate the often stressful waters of life, both for yourself and for those you care about.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
It's so true. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's why asking questions and really listening is so crucial.
Precisely. It's about empowering them to find what works best for them.
You know, it's funny because we've been talking about helping others with stress, but this whole conversation has actually been making me feel less stressed.
Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because we're focusing on connection, empathy, and understanding. You know, it feels like we're shifting away from that individualistic, every man for himself mentality that can be so prevalent, especially in times of stress.
That's a brilliant observation, and it actually ties into another fascinating concept that came up in our research.
Okay.
Emotional contagion. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think so. Tell me more.
Essentially, it's the idea that we unconsciously absorb the emotions of those around us.
Okay.
So if we're constantly surrounded by stressed out people, we're more likely to feel stressed ourselves.
Wow, that makes so much sense. It explains why I feel so drained after spending time with someone who's super anxious or negative.
Exactly. But the flip side is also true.
Okay.
When we're around people who are calm, grounded, and supportive, we're more likely to feel those positive emotions as well.
So by learning how to better support others with stress,
Yeah.
we're actually benefiting ourselves too.
Right. It's like a ripple effect
I'd love that.
of positive energy.
Okay, so we've talked about recognizing signs, validating feelings, asking the right questions, and even exploring stress-busting activities. Yeah. But before we wrap up, is there anything else our listeners should keep in mind?
Yes. There's one final but crucial point I'd like to emphasize.
Okay.
It's the idea of helping someone with stress, not with the intent to fix them, but rather to simply be there to listen, to validate, and to empower them to find their own solutions.
I love that it's about walking alongside them on their journey, not trying to drag them to a destination we've chosen.
Remember, each person's experience with stress is unique, And there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
So true. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's why asking questions and really listening is so crucial.
Precisely, it's about empowering them to find what works best for them.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
Well,
I feel like I have a whole new perspective on how to help someone who's stressed.
I'm glad. Remember, sometimes the smallest gestures of care can have the biggest impact.
Absolutely. A listening ear, a helping hand, a simple reminder that they're not alone. These things can make all the difference.
They can. And now I have a question for you, our listener. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to fix your stress instead of simply listening? How did that make you feel?
That's a great question to reflect on. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. We hope you found these insights helpful and that you'll carry them with you as you navigate the often stressful waters of life, both for yourself and for those you care about.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
It's so true. You know, it's like they hear you, but they don't really hear you.
Right, they're not really listening. They're just waiting for their turn to offer a solution.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't feel good.
No, not at all. It can actually make you feel more alone and misunderstood.
It's so common, though, isn't it?
It is. Our society is very solution-oriented.
Right. We want to fix things.
We want to make things better, get rid of the problem.
Make it go away.
Exactly. But sometimes that approach can backfire, especially when it comes to emotions.
It's like we're so uncomfortable with negative emotions that we try to sweep them under the rug or pretend they don't exist.
Exactly. But as we've been discussing throughout this deep dive,
Right.
allowing space for those emotions, acknowledging them, and validating them is often the most helpful thing we can do.
It's about shifting our focus from fixing to being present with someone in their pain, even if it's uncomfortable for us.
You planned perfectly. And one thing that really struck me from our research
Okay.
was the importance of not just listening to the words someone is saying,
Right.
but also paying attention to their nonverbal cues.
Oh, that's a great point. Body language can speak volumes.
Absolutely. So even if someone is saying they're fine, but their shoulders are slumped,
Right.
they're avoiding eye contact, or they're fidgeting,
Yeah.
those nonverbal cues might be telling a different story.
So it's about tuning into their energy.
Yeah.
Their tone of voice, their overall demeanor, not just taking their words at face value.
Exactly. And sometimes the most powerful way to validate someone's feelings is to simply reflect back what you're seeing and hearing.
Can you give an example of what that might sound like?
Sure. Let's say a friend is telling you about a stressful situation at work.
Okay.
And they're clearly upset. Instead of jumping in with advice
Right.
or trying to fix the problem, you could say something like, wow, that sounds incredibly frustrating.
Okay.
I can see how upset you are about this.
It's so simple, but so powerful.
It is, because you're not trying to change their feelings or tell them how they should be feeling.
Right.
You're simply acknowledging their experience.
Meeting them where they are emotionally.
Precisely. And from there,
Right.
you can ask open-ended questions to encourage them to share more and process their feelings.
Like, what's been the hardest part about this for you?
Yeah, exactly. Or how are you coping with all of this?
Right. Those kinds of questions can help them delve deeper into their experience.
Yes.
And maybe even start to uncover their own solutions.
That's the goal.
This has been such an incredible deep dive.
It has been.
I feel like I've gained so many valuable insights into how to better support the people in my life.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And it's made me realize how often I've fallen into that trap of trying to fix things.
Yeah.
Instead of just being present.
I think we're all guilty of that at times.
Yeah.
It's a natural human instinct to want to help and make things better.
Yeah.
But sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is simply be there.
Right.
Listen, validate, and empower others to find their own way.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
We've covered so much ground.
We have.
But I hope our listeners will walk away feeling more equipped to navigate the complexities of stress and support.
And remember, sometimes the smallest gestures of care can have the biggest impact.
Yes.
So the next time someone in your life is struggling, take a moment to truly listen, validate their feelings, and offer your support. You might be surprised by the difference it makes.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.